Russian President Vladimir Putin stated necessary conditions for ending the military operation in Ukraine. Europe and the United States feel the consequence of the economic sanctions against Russia. Authorities in Indian-controlled Kashmir registered 1 dead and more than 20 others injured after a grenade attack at a PC market. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. This Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin stated in a telephone conversation with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan his conditions for ending the military operation in Ukraine. During the telephone conversation, the Russian president confirmed his country's willingness to hold a dialogue with the Ukrainian authorities and foreign partners in order to consolidate a negotiated solution to the conflict. He also denounced that Ukraine is constantly delaying negotiations to reorganize its forces while using civilians as human shields. Also, the Russian president reminded that Russian troops are doing their best to ensure the safety of citizens. Meanwhile, the Turkish president expressed his concern about the campaign waged by Western countries against Russia. During the talks, both leaders also reaffirmed their commitment to trade and economic cooperation between Moscow and Istanbul. In Moscow, President Putin held a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister where they addressed Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. According to Dmitry Peskov, Russian presidential spokesman, this Saturday Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett held a meeting that focused on the situation in Ukraine. He also stated that after meeting with President Putin, Bennett phoned Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. The office of the Israeli Prime Minister informed that the two leaders also talked about the negotiations in Vienna for the nuclear agreement with Iran. The Russian Defense Ministry confirmed this Sunday the reopening of the humanitarian corridors from the city of Mariupol and Volnovakha in the Donbas region. The first people evacuated came from Mariupol, and its suburbs have been transferred to the Novosibirsk district, as reported by the headquarters of the Donetsk People's Republic. For his part, Eduard Basurin, spokesman for the militia of the Donetsk People's Republic, said that the corridors are reopened at the order of the Ukrainian commanders who are in charge of the process of defense of the settlements because they are the ones who have blocked the flow of humanitarian passage. For the time being, Donetsk has managed to evacuate more than 300 civilians from Mariupol and its vicinity to the southern district of Novosov, despite provocations by units of Ukrainian nationalists. Currently, there have been no reports of civilians leaving Volnovakha. The humanitarian corridors are set to close at 9 p.m. local time. The Russian Defense Ministry has denounced that Ukrainian nationalist units continue to prevent the civilian population from leaving through humanitarian corridors. After Russia announced the ceasefire, Kiev military commandos took advantage of the truce to improve their attack positions and also deliberately obstruct civilians from leaving their residential areas to enter humanitarian corridors deployed and protected by the Russian troops. The military high command also reported that with the help of surveillance, they have been able to corroborate how Kiev's troops are taking advantage of the truce to move forward material to more advantaged positions, which they have described as a provocation, a lie, and a deception. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and U.S. President Joe Biden had a telephone conversation on Saturday where they discussed issues related to providing more resources for Ukraine and new sanctions against Russia. President Biden assured that his administration will increase humanitarian, economic, and security aid to Kiev. During the conversation, there was also reference to the events at the Ukrainian nuclear power plant. The head of the White House praised the courage of those who took up the defense of the facility. It was also reported that President Zelensky held talks with members of the United States Congress and asked them to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine and tougher sanctions against Moscow, as well as more military aid. And as the crisis in Eastern Europe continues to unfold, we have our TeleSUR collaborator Abbas Sabak with updated details about the situation in Ukraine's capital.
On the 10th day of the Russian military operation to protect the Donbas region, the people of Kiev continue to leave the city. These cars we see are all coming out of Kiev. Although there is no traffic on this road here, there is traffic on the other entrances to Kiev. Therefore, whoever can get out of the capital should not delay in doing so, especially because the battles are more intense in the northwest of Kiev, near the border with Belarus, and in the northeast, near the border with Russia. The Chernigov axis is the hottest, and then there is Brovary Gostomel and the mother of all battles, as it is called, in Bucha and Irpin, which are only 20 kilometers from Kiev. Russian forces are getting closer and closer to the Ukrainian capital, and sirens have not stopped surrounding in the last hours in the city of Kiev.
In Syria, members of the Ukrainian security services and Turkish intelligence officers recruited insurgents in the north of the country to join the ranks of the Ukrainian forces. According to a Russian military source quoted by the Russian agency RIA Novosti, a group of 3 members of the Ukrainian security forces mobilized with Turkish intelligence officers to the cities of Afrin and Azaz in northern Syria on February 4th to pay a visit to the insurgent group called Free Syrian Army. According to the source, the meeting was aimed at discussing the possibility of members of that group joining the ranks of the Ukrainian forces to fight against Russia, and therefore a series of secret meetings were organized. This Sunday, Canada asked its citizens still residing in Russia to leave the country after claiming that security conditions in that nation could deteriorate as tensions with Ukraine intensify. The Canadian Foreign Ministry explained in a statement that consular services in Russia may be severely limited, while the availability of flights is becoming increasingly reduced. Therefore, they call on Canadian citizens who are still in Russia to leave the country and take advantage of the fact that commercial means of transportation are still available. With this decision, Canada joins the list of countries such as the United States and France, which have recommended their citizens to leave Russia due to the growing tensions with Ukraine and in the midst of the multiple international sanctions against that country. We have a short break coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Europe and the United States feel the consequences of the economic sanctions against Russia. Finnish media released a report announcing that 90% of the country's exporting companies will be affected. The study carried out by the Finland Central Chamber of Commerce asked that 78% of the exporting companies operate directly or indirectly with Russia, and among them 22% have the Slavic country as their main partner. The institution further underlines the effects on the banking sector, which is unable to continue the flow of transactions after the punitive measures. The document concludes that the so-called sanctions will bring more negative consequences to Europe than to Russia itself. The boomerang effect of the sanctions imposed by the European Union in alliance with Washington against Russia and its people is beginning to hit the pockets of U.S. citizens who have already begun long travels to Mexico to refuel their vehicles due to the increase in fuel prices registered in the last few days. Residents and citizens of the United States began to refuel in Juarez due to the difference in prices, since on the other side of the border it increased exponentially due to the conflict in Ukraine and especially due to the sanctions applied against Russia. According to official records of border authorities, around 50,000 U.S. and Mexican-American citizens cross the border to refuel daily. Fernando Carvajal, leader of the Gasoline Retailers Organization, stated that the difference in average is around 3 Mexican pesos, close to 0.14 US dollars per liter, which represents a saving under current circumstances. It was also reported that this Sunday in many European countries, the price of electricity reached record levels for the second consecutive day, and as it happens with gasoline in the United States, the increase in rates is directly related to the sanctions imposed against Russia. The official Russian airline Aeroflot, the most sanctioned airline in the world today, has been able to cross the American continent and part of Europe to bring back home 300 citizens who were on vacations in Cuba. The Russian Consulate General in Havana assured that despite everything, the Russians continue to return home and confirmed the return of 300 fellow citizens, while it also thanked the consular staff accredited on the island for their efforts. According to the Association of Russian Tour Operators, ATOR, there are still between 6,000 and 8,000 Russian citizens in Cuba, so Aeroflot plans to operate regular flights to Havana and Punta Cana in Dominican Republic to repatriate Russian citizens currently abroad. The European Union closed its airspace to Russian airlines as part of the sanctions adopted in response to the special military operation authorized by President Vladimir Putin in Ukraine on February 24th. On the occasion of its 5th Congress, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela declared its support to Russia in its fight against Nazism. On behalf of the socialist organization, the vice president of the party, Diosdado Cabello, emphasized Venezuela's full support for Russia in its fight against neo-Nazi movements that have gained strength during the conflict in recent years. The leader made the statements in the presence of the ambassadors of Russia, China, Cuba, and Nicaragua, as well as other regional leaders present at the event. We move to Mexico. The governors of Querétaro and Jalisco condemned the acts of violence at the football match. The governor of the Mexican state of Querétaro, Mauricio Curi, said there will be no impunity and that the full weight of the law will be applied to those responsible for these despicable acts of violence. For his part, the governor of Jalisco, Enrique Alfaro, pledged his support in everything necessary to solve these events and determine the culprits. Meanwhile, the president of the Mexican Football League, Mikel Arriola, announced the suspension of all the remaining matches scheduled for today, March 6. Finally, the latest report from Querétaro Civil Protection Authority stands with 26 people injured, 3 of them seriously, and no one dead. Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry announced the arrival of a mission from the Caribbean community to help the authorities prepare for the upcoming elections and find the best ways to fight the high levels of insecurity that shake the nation. The Prime Minister said the CARICOM mission will meet with the country's defense forces, including the National Police and the Armed Forces, to help understand and solve the problem of insecurity in the nation. Insecurity in Haiti was widely discussed during the 33rd CARICOM Heads of State Summit and in the 4th meeting of this organization with the Central American Integration System. Haiti's Prime Minister asked fellow countries for help in combating insecurity marked, amongst others, by multiple kidnappings. South Korean President Moon Jae-in opened the way for emergency financial support for several wildfire-hit areas by declaring them a special disaster zone on Sunday. Thousands of firefighters and troops have been battling the wildfire that tore through an eastern coastal area and temporarily threatened a nuclear power plant station and liquefied natural gas plant. The fire, which began Friday morning on a mountain in the seaside town of Ulin and has spread across more than 6,000 hectares to the nearby city of Samcheok, destroyed more than 100 homes around 46 other buildings and prompted the evacuation of more than 6,000 people. South Korea's Ministry of Interior and Safety said there were no immediate reports of injuries or death. Officials were investigating the cause of the blaze, which grew rapidly amid strong winds and dry conditions. We have one final short break coming up, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. One person was killed and more than 20 others injured on Sunday in a grenade attack at a busy market in India-controlled Kashmir. According to local media reports, the target of the attack in Srinagar appeared to have been security personnel in the area. There was a huge crowd in the market when the grenade exploded. India and Pakistan each administer a part of Kashmir, but both claim the territory in its entirety. India accuses Pakistan of supporting armed rebels who want to unite the region either under Pakistani rule or as an independent country. Islamabad denies the accusations and says it only provides diplomatic and moral support for the Kashmiri people. In Indian-controlled Kashmir, tens of thousands of civilians, rebels, and government forces have been killed in the past 2 decades.
In the grenade attack at Harry's in Hyde Street, 20 were wounded and 1 died. We are asserting the facts. We have a few clues, and the security forces are on the job. We will soon find the attacker.
And more than 100 hungry and weak Rohingya Muslims were found on a beach in Indonesia's northernmost province of Aceh on Sunday after weeks at sea. The 58 men, 21 women, and 35 children were given shelter and received help from villagers, police, and the military, while local authorities, including the Coronavirus Task Force, were helping to process them. More than 700,000 Rohingya Muslims have fled from Buddhist-majority Myanmar to refugee camps in Bangladesh since August 2017, when the Myanmar military launched a clearance operation in response to attacks by a rebel group. Myanmar security forces have been accused of mass rapes, killings, and the burning of thousands of homes. Groups of Rohingya have attempted to leave the crowded camps in Bangladesh and travel by sea in hazardous voyages to other Muslim-majority countries in the region. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi held a phone conversation with United States State Secretary Antony Blinken. Wang Yi expressed his country's concern about the United States' recent words and deeds that run counter to the objective to implement the consensus reached by the two sides, noting that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Wang urged the U.S. side to return to the true meaning of the One China principle. The Chinese diplomat stated that the U.S. should stop interfering in his country's internal affairs and safeguard the overall situation of China-U.S. relations with concrete actions. According to South Korea Armed Forces, North Korea has conducted a new launch of an unidentified missile aimed at the Sea of Japan. This will be the 9th missile test this year. According to reports in Seoul, Pyongyang has already conducted 7 tests of various weapons between January and February, including one to develop a reconnaissance satellite. South Korea claims that the escalation in testing stemmed from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's order to bolster the country's military capability by 2022. North Korea has repeatedly stated that the nature of its military capability is one of self-defense in the face of hostile actions between what it describes as its greatest enemy, the United States, and its closest ally, South Korea. And during a first-ever media appearance in Afghanistan, the Taliban acting Interior Minister Sirajuddin Haqqani said Saturday that the Taliban-led country vowed not to be a threat to the world. Haqqani, who has been designated as a terrorist by the United States, made his comments during a police graduation ceremony in Kabul. For the first time, video footage showing his face was broadcast by local television channels and news websites. This was a clear contrast compared with the previous public appearance in October, which had his photo published blurred. The police graduation ceremony provided the first wave of new police graduates since the Taliban assumed control of Afghanistan. Haqqani is currently wanted by the FBI and carries a $10 million bounty for information leading to his arrest.
We have promised the world and our nation that our country will not be a threat to anyone, and we will safeguard the lives and properties of our countrymen. The individuals present here are fully responsible to do that job.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories at our website at telesurenglish.net. Remember, you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.